Have you ever wondered why the harder you try in a relationship, the faster it seems to fall apart? You remember their favorite coffee order? You always respond within minutes? You never cancel plans? You put their needs before your own? And somehow the person you're doing all this for becomes more distant, not closer. More distracted, not more grateful. More uncertain about you, not more convinced. If that description just hit a little too close to home, don't close this video. Because what I'm about to explain isn't another dating hack or some manipulation technique designed to make people want you more. This is about answering a question most people spend decades avoiding. Why does your happiness depend so heavily on whether one specific person texts you back? That question sounds simple. It isn't. And by the end of today, you're going to understand a pattern that's been quietly running your relationships for years, maybe your entire adult life. A pattern that has absolutely nothing to do with bad luck or meeting the wrong people, and everything to do with something nobody ever taught you to recognize in yourself. Let me tell you about someone I knew. We'll call her Maya. Maya was extraordinary on paper. Successful career, close group of friends, physically fit, emotionally intelligent enough to have deep conversations about feelings and needs. And yet somehow, every relationship followed the exact same script. She'd meet someone, things would start well, then slowly, week by week, she'd find herself doing more and more of the emotional labor, more initiating, more planning, more reassuring, more analyzing every word in their messages for hidden meanings. And the more effort she poured in, the less the other person seemed to value it. She'd tell herself different stories each time. This person was emotionally unavailable. That person had commitment issues. The other one was still hung up on their ex. And all of those things might have been partially true. But after the fifth relationship that followed this exact trajectory, the excuses started wearing thin. Because at a certain point, when the same dynamic keeps repeating with completely different people, you have to start asking yourself the uncomfortable question. What's the one constant in all of these situations? The uncomfortable answer? It was her. Not because she was fundamentally flawed or unlovable or doing something obviously wrong, but because she was operating from a place most people never even realize they're in. She was trying to earn love instead of simply offering it and seeing if someone met her halfway. Here's what nobody tells you about relationships and what took Maya years of repeating the same painful pattern to finally understand. When you need someone's validation to feel okay about yourself, they can sense it. Not consciously, maybe. Not in a way they could articulate if you ask them directly. But humans are incredibly sensitive to desperation, even when it's dressed up as devotion. Think about it this way. Have you ever had someone be overly interested in being your friend? Someone who laughed too hard at your jokes, who agreed with everything you said, who was always available no matter when you reached out? Did that make you respect them more or less? Be honest. Something about it probably felt off. Not because they were bad people, but because their eagerness revealed something uncomfortable. They needed something from you that you hadn't agreed to provide. Your approval, your validation, your confirmation that they mattered. Romantic relationships work the same way. When someone can feel that you need them more than you need your own peace of mind, something fundamental shifts. Not because people are cruel or shallow, but because need reads as desperation. And desperation, fair or not, reads as low value. This is hard to hear. I know it is. Because we're taught our whole lives that effort equals results. Work hard enough at anything and you'll succeed. Show up consistently and people will notice. Care deeply and others will care back. That works for a lot of things. It does not work this way in attraction, because attraction isn't a transaction. It's a response to something much deeper than effort. It's a response to the energy underneath the effort. Two people can send the exact same good morning text. One person sends it because they genuinely woke up thinking about the other person and wanted to share that feeling. The other sends it because the silence between messages makes them anxious, and they need reassurance that things are still okay. The words are identical. The energy is completely different, and people feel that difference even when they can't explain it. So here's the real question. And I want you to actually sit with this instead of immediately defending yourself against it. When you think about your last relationship or your current one, are you building something together or are you campaigning to be chosen? Those two things can look almost identical from the outside. The person building shows up fully, contributes generously, stays engaged and present. The person campaigning does all those same things, but from a completely different place internally. They're performing. They're managing. They're constantly calculating whether they're doing enough, being enough, saying the right things. And that constant internal monitoring creates a kind of tension that other people pick up on, even if neither person can name exactly what feels off. Maya's breakthrough came during a moment that seemed insignificant at the time. She was dating someone new, someone she really liked, and they'd gone 2 days without texting. 2 days. Not 2 weeks, not ghosting, just 2 normal days where life got busy. And she realized she'd spent probably 6 hours of those 2 days either crafting the perfect message to send or talking herself out of sending anything at all. 6 hours of mental energy consumed by whether or not to send a text message to someone she'd known for 3 weeks. That's when it finally clicked for her. This wasn't about the other person at all. This was about her using another person's attention as proof that she was worthwhile. And no amount of attention would ever be enough to fill that hole, because the hole wasn't created by a lack of external validation. It was created by not believing in her own value, independent of anyone else's opinion. If you're watching this and something uncomfortable is stirring in your chest right now, good. Stay with that feeling. That discomfort is information. It's your mind recognizing a truth you've been working very hard not to see clearly. Before we go further, if you actually want to understand yourself at a level that creates real change, instead of just collecting more information you'll forget by next week, subscribe right now. Because what's coming next is the part that actually explains how to break this pattern permanently, not just understand it intellectually. Let's talk about why this happens in the first place. Because understanding the origin makes it significantly easier to interrupt the pattern in real time. For most people, this dynamic doesn't start in adult relationships. It starts much earlier, usually in childhood, in families where love felt conditional, where you learned early that affection wasn't freely given, it had to be earned through good behavior, achievement, managing someone's mood, staying small enough not to be a burden. When you grow up like that, you develop extremely sensitive radar for other people's emotions. You become an expert at reading the room, anticipating needs, adjusting yourself to keep the peace. These are valuable skills in some contexts, but they come with a hidden cost. You learn to see your own worth through other people's reactions to you. And that wiring doesn't just turn off when you become an adult. It shows up in every relationship you enter, romantic or otherwise, until you consciously decide to rewire it. The child who learned that love had to be earned becomes the adult who overextends in every relationship. The child who learned to be hypervigilant about someone's mood becomes the adult who monitors every text for tone, every delay for hidden meaning. The child who stayed small to avoid being too much becomes the adult who apologizes for having needs at all. None of this means you're broken. It means you adapted intelligently to the environment you grew up in. But that adaptation, useful as it was then, is actively hurting you now. Because adult relationships between equals aren't supposed to work like that. You're not supposed to have to earn someone's affection every single day through perfect behavior. That's exhausting. And more importantly, it's impossible to sustain. Here's what actually changes things. And this is going to sound almost too simple to be the answer, but I promise you it is. You have to build a life that feels complete without anyone else in it. Not as a strategy to attract someone, not as a technique to seem more desirable, but genuinely actually complete. So that when someone enters your life, they're adding to something already whole, not filling a void that's been aching for years. Most people hear that advice and immediately think it means becoming cold or unavailable or pretending not to care. That's not it at all. Pretending is just another performance, just another way of organizing your behavior around managing someone else's perception of you. What I'm talking about is different. I'm talking about genuinely reducing how much your internal stability depends on any one person's response to you. This means building real friendships that have nothing to do with dating. People who knew you before this relationship and will still know you after. This means developing actual skills, actual competence in something that matters to you. Because competence creates a quiet confidence that no amount of someone telling you you're great can replicate. This means taking care of your physical body, not to become more attractive to someone else, but because feeling strong changes how you move through every single moment of your life. This means having goals that exist completely separately from your relationship status. Things you're working toward that won't disappear if a relationship ends tomorrow. This means knowing how to be alone without feeling lonely, how to spend a weekend by yourself and actually enjoy it instead of just killing time until someone texts you. I know what some of you are thinking right now. That sounds great in theory, but what if I do all that and I'm still single? What if building this complete life doesn't actually lead to finding someone? Here's the truth. It might not. There are no guarantees. You could do everything right and still end up alone for a while longer, maybe a long while, but here's what changes. The quality of that aloneness is completely different. The old version of alone felt empty, desperate, like waiting in a dark room for someone to finally turn on the lights. The new version of alone feels full, peaceful, like having a home you're genuinely happy to be in, whether or not someone else ever moves in with you. And here's the part nobody mentions. That version of you, the one who's genuinely content alone, is exactly the version most capable of actually building something real when the right person does show up. Because you're no longer trying to use another person to complete yourself. You're simply inviting someone to share something already good. Let me be specific about what this looks like in practice. Because theory without application is just entertainment. The next time someone you're interested in takes hours to respond to a message, notice the anxiety that comes up. Don't try to push it away or pretend it isn't there. Just notice it. Feel where it sits in your body, your chest, your stomach, your throat. And then instead of immediately doing something to make it stop, sending another message, checking their social media, rehearsing worst case scenarios, just sit with it, breathe through it, let it exist without feeding it. This sounds simple. It is not easy because every instinct you have will be screaming at you to do something, anything, to make the discomfort stop. But here's what happens when you practice this enough times. The anxiety spike gets shorter. The first few times it might last hours. Then it starts lasting an hour, then 30 minutes. Then it becomes just a brief flutter you barely notice before it passes on its own. That's not because you've stopped caring about the person. It's because you've stopped making their response time the determining factor in whether you feel okay about yourself. That shift, small as it sounds, changes everything. Another practice. The next time you're about to send a message, pause for 5 seconds and ask yourself one question. Am I sending this because I genuinely have something to say, or am I sending this to relieve my own anxiety? Be ruthlessly honest. If the answer is the second one, don't send it. not as a game or a tactic, but simply because messages sent from anxiety almost always make things worse, not better. This doesn't mean never reaching out. It means learning to tell the difference between connection and reassurance seeking. Connection feels open, generous, genuinely curious about the other person. Reassurance seeking feels tight, urgent, like you need a specific response to feel okay again. Learn to notice that difference in your body before the message ever gets typed. Here's another layer most people miss. This pattern doesn't just show up in romantic relationships. Once you start looking for it, you'll see it everywhere. The way you interact with your boss, always working late, always taking on extra projects, not purely out of ambition, but out of a quiet fear that saying no will reveal you're not valuable enough to keep. The way you show up in friendships, always the one initiating plans, always accommodating everyone else's schedule, rarely stating your own preferences because you don't want to be inconvenient. The same core issue runs through all of it. You're outsourcing your sense of worth to other people's approval. And no amount of approval ever fully satisfies that hunger because the hunger was never really about them. It was always about you not believing you were enough on your own. Fixing it in one area tends to create shifts in all the others because you're addressing the root, not just trimming the branches. When you stop needing your romantic partner's constant reassurance, you also stop needing your boss's validation or your friend's approval in the same desperate way. Your whole life starts to feel lighter because you're no longer carrying the impossible weight of needing everyone around you to constantly confirm that you matter. Let's address the fear I know some of you are sitting with right now. The fear that doing this work, becoming genuinely independent and stable, will somehow make you less capable of intimacy, less able to let someone in, colder, more guarded. This fear gets it exactly backward. Neediness isn't intimacy, even though it often feels intense enough to be mistaken for it. Real intimacy requires two stable people showing up fully, not one person and one performance desperately seeking approval. You cannot truly see another person, their actual personality, their real needs, their genuine flaws and strengths when you're too busy monitoring their every move for signs of whether they still like you enough. Stability doesn't block intimacy. It creates the space for intimacy to actually exist, because intimacy requires presence. And you cannot be present when half your attention is consumed by anxiety about whether you're being enough in this exact moment. There's one more thing worth saying clearly before we finish, because it's the piece that determines whether any of this actually sticks or quietly fades within 2 weeks, like most insights do. Change like this doesn't happen through willpower alone. You can't just grit your teeth and force yourself to stop feeling anxious. It happens through environment and repetition. Small daily choices, repeated enough times that they gradually become your new normal. That might look like protecting time for the things that make your life feel full, not as an afterthought, but as an actual priority you defend as seriously as you defend an important meeting. It might look like deliberately spending time alone, not as punishment, but as practice for being comfortable in your own company. It might look like noticing every single time the old pattern shows up, the urge to check their location, the urge to over-explain something simple, the urge to drop your plans because they suddenly became available, and pausing there instead of automatically acting on it. Each pause is a repetition. Each repetition done enough times becomes a new automatic response that's healthier than the old one. This isn't quick. It takes months, not days. But the alternative is spending the rest of your life repeating the same painful pattern with different people, wondering why nothing ever changes. So here's where we end up. The question was never how to make someone choose you. That question chased directly keeps you trapped in exactly the dynamic we've been dissecting this entire time. The real question is, what kind of life are you building regardless of who decides to join it? Build that life fully, with purpose, with real friendships, with competence in things that matter to you, with days that feel meaningful whether or not anyone texts you. Build it so completely that you stop needing anyone else's participation to feel like your life is worthwhile. And then something interesting happens, not because you engineered it, but as a natural side effect. You become the kind of person other people want to be around. Not because you performed your way into being attractive, but because someone who's genuinely at peace inside their own life is rare and magnetic in a way no amount of trying can fake. The work isn't glamorous, it's not fast, and nobody can do it for you. But it's the only work that actually lasts beyond any single relationship, good or bad. Stop chasing people who make you feel like you have to earn their attention. Start becoming someone who doesn't need to chase anyone because you're already whole. That shift, lived daily in small, unglamorous choices, is everything. If this resonated, subscribe because there's more of this work ahead. I'll see you in the next one.